Sobek, also known as Sebek, Sebek-Ra, Suchos, Sobki, was an ancient netter of crocodiles. He is first mentioned in the pyramid text, and his deification continued up until the time of the Roman period. Now, some sects believe that Sobek was the creator of the world who arose from the dark water and created the order in the universe. This was a neter who was also associated with the Nile, which brought fertility to the land. And he took on the title of Lord of the Waters. And he was thought to have risen from the primeval waters of none to create the world and made the Nile specifically from his sweat. Another creation myth states that Sobek laid eggs on the banks of the water of the Nun, thus creating the world. As far as being a creator or force of creation, he was also seen as an unpredictable deity who sometimes allied himself with the forces of chaos. Now, it's important to remember that chaos and creation are somewhat linked together in that we need that chaos energy or that untapped energy to actually create the universe or create life. So this deity again has a celestial origin in Canis Major. He is associated with crocodiles, but also water, the Nile, creation, and chaos. And as I had mentioned in literary references, he is found in the pyramid text. Sobek was a neter who enjoyed a great cult following, which ran extensively along the Nile Valley, but was particularly prominent in the fertile Fayum region. And near Aswan in Upper Kemet, a sanctuary was dedicated to him as well. Sobek first appears in the Old Kingdom and is represented as a son of Neith, who, if you look through our library, we've done a video on Neith as well. And Sobek ended up taking on the title of the Rager, which is tied to his representation of chaos. And in some myths, he is actually the father of Set, a neter who himself is also associated with the forces of chaos. So it makes sense to see that association between these particular characters. But he also had a strong relationship with the neter who was Heru. Some mythologies he was paired with a number of goddesses in different locations, but most notably with Hathor and Tawet, who was of course the demon aspect of Kemetic mythology. And he's been linked as being both the father of Khonsu, who is the moon deity, but also Heru, who of course is the redeemer, or the one who comes back and fights back the forces of chaos. Now, the idea of the crocodile was just central to what this character was. Obviously in the Nile, where we see that livelihood of that type of creature, and in some areas a tame crocodile was worshipped as the earthly embodiment of Sobek himself, while in other places crocodiles were reviled and hunted and killed. And it seems likely that Sobek began as a more of a dark personality or a dark persona that needs to be appeased. But his protective qualities and his strength were valued when they were used in defense of the pharaoh and of the people. And that almost mimics what we see with the neter that we call Set. He had that similar destructive, chaotic element to his persona, but he was known for being the protector of Ra. So that's important similarities we see in a character that in some mythologies is his direct ancestor, his father. Now, this deity was also connected with the underworld, and he was seen as a protector for justified dead in the netherworld, often restoring their sight and reviving their senses, making them more in tune with his new environment. Because he was known for his ferocity, he was considered to be a patron of the army and was deified by many soldiers. After Asar was slain by Set and his body parts were scattered around the world, some were in the river systems, and myths tell us that Sobek assisted Aset in finding all the various parts of her husband, and it was crucial in putting him back together that the pieces that were left in the river were ultimately retrieved, which he allowed her to do. He is also the protector of the 4 sons of Heru, who play an important role in the mummification rituals of Upper and Lower Kemet. In Siti, who was the human-headed protector of the liver, Happy, the baboon-headed protector of the lungs, Dumatef, who was the jackal-headed protector of the stomach, and falcon-headed protector of the intestine. And when these four beings rose from the waters in a lotus bloom, he used a net and protected them from drowning early on. And these were very important characters to obviously Heru and the preservation of the body during the mummification process. The strength and speed of the crocodile was thought to symbolize the power of the pharaoh, and the word sovereign was written in hieroglyphics with the crocodile. So that strength was extremely important in representing the pharaoh himself and sovereignty of the kingdom. It was thought that Sobek could protect the pharaoh from specifically dark energy, and during the 12th and 13th dynasties, the cult of Sobek was given particular prominence, and a number of rulers incorporated him into their coronation names, including the first fully attested female pharaoh, Sobek-Nefru. He is seen as a crocodile, a mummified crocodile, or a man with a crocodile head. He often wore a plumed headdress with a horned sun disk or the Atif crown, associating him with Amun-Ra, and carried the Wa scepter, representing power, and the Ankh, representing the breath of life. So many of the common things, we know that the Wa scepter, of course, is associated with the city of Was, which was a great receptacle of power itself. You can check out the video coming on the Wa scepter as well. Mummified crocodiles representing this nectar have been found in many ancient tombs, and the Kemites mummified both infant and mature crocodiles and in turn crocodile eggs with the deceased in order to enlist the protection of Sobek in the afterlife. As I mentioned earlier, Sobek was known as the Lord of Fan, which was a very fertile area, and that tied into his personage of a giver of life, again rising with the waters, and of course in that area the Nile brought waters and brought life, so he was tied to that very concept of originating life or generating life. There was another 12th dynasty temple at Medinet Mandi, which is dedicated to Sobek. His wife, who was a snake deity, was the protector of harvests and granaries. This temple was originally built by Amenhotep III and Amenhotep IV, but was restored during the New Kingdom and expanded during the Ptolemaic era. Tame crocodiles were kept in a sacred pool and had fed choice cuts of meat and honey cakes and adorned with precious jewels. Now, the worship of Sobek extended into Thebes and Como Ambu, where there was a dual temple dedicated to both Sobek and Heru. The left side was dedicated to Horus, the elder, as opposed to Horus the son, while the right side was dedicated to Sobek. Each temple had its own entrance, chapel, and dedicated priests. The temple was constructed during the Ptolemaic period, but there is an evidence of an older structure at this location. In this temple, Horus appears with his wife and his son, while Sobek appears with Hathor and Khonsu, forming a triad between those three deities. So Sobek is a deity that we don't hear as much about in terms of the conversations about these Neteru who have been transformed in some mythologies to gods, but he remains an important figure, being there attributed with the very creation of the world. He's a very important figure, seen as both a protector and in some instances a creator. Thank you again for joining us here at Nine World Chronicles as we explore more mysteries within mythology that we find from every corner of the world.